We're going to start with the state of the industry as we know it today. And as Shannon mentioned, AURI has done a lot of work on studying the hemp industry and the whole value chain and what we see as being developed. So here to present that today and talk about our hemp report is Harold Stanislawski and Riley Gordon. Harold's a project development director for AURI and previously served as the executive director of the Fergus Falls Economic Improvement Commission, the vice president of the Greater Minnesota Economic Development Partnership, and was appointed to lead the Minnesota Department of Agribusiness Development Services. And Riley applies the skills he gained through his education and related industry experience to work as an engineer in AURI's broad range of projects and initiatives. Riley also holds a Bachelor of Science degree in physics from Brandon University and a bachelor's degree in civil engineering with environmental emphasis in water-related topics from the University of Minnesota. Harold and Riley.
All right.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you all for coming here today. It's really good for you to be here, and I'm very proud to be next to my colleague here, Riley Gordon, who hails from the province of Manitoba in the great country of Canada. So, that's great.
Thanks, Harold.
We're going to get right into this because we are on a timeline, and I always say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and we do have a lot of pictures here, but it shows you kind of what's going on and so forth. So you're all valued participants here, and we thank you again for coming. It's like Shannon said, we started this initiative under the auspice that there was lots of value-added work to do in the hemp space. And that's why we deem this value chain analysis to try to see what kind of infrastructure we need here in the state to move forward. We had a lot of objectives to accomplish here when we moved along, and one is focusing on the hemp value chain for this state and kind of our neighboring area as well, because we know that commerce goes across state lines. The analysis of the oil, the meal, the hemp, the flour, all of it needed to be done, to be characterized, to understand it better, and how it fits into existing value chains in this state. And the identification of hemp-based markets. Where are the markets? Because you can't raise a crop if you don't have a market for it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, of what seems to have a fairly good market and what seems to be ones that are still a bit away yet. The identity of a state-of-the-art industry for processing and co-product approval for feed is something we'll also talk about, and then the release of the report itself, which you'll see. So AURI focus on these four areas of food, bio-based products, co-products, and renewable energy, and oddly enough, hemp fits into every single one of those. Because with 50,000 uses, there's uses in every category. It's just an amazing crop that way. Not many crops do that. So, our milestones of Minnesota, the journey in hemp so far. Think about it, folks. This bill got passed in December, I think the 20th of 2018, and here we are today, 11 months. What's been accomplished? Well, first of all, I just put this here. 2014, we get the research pilot industrial hemp thing approved. 2015, the state legislature moves forward with the Minnesota Industrial Development Act and starts the process in Minnesota. 2016, we had growers that stepped up to grow industrial hemp. 2018, not very long, the USDA Farm Bill is passed. Hemp legal nationwide. And now, in 2019, the hemp infrastructure continues to emerge at a rapid pace. And when I say at a rapid pace, I'll tell you what I mean. I mean, we have at least a half a dozen extractors up in the state that have spent millions of dollars already for the extraction of the CBD oil. We have a food-grade industrial hemp oil and protein plant up already in the state of Minnesota. Quite an accomplishment, I think. We have fiber shed development research and studies going on right now to try to understand this fiber opportunity more. And we're very glad that we have a really good speaker today that you're going to hear from who knows a lot about it. And feed characterization. It's very, very important that we get this done, that we understand the feed possibilities in hemp, because it is an additional value add chain that is so important. And while it needs approval, we'll talk about that in a minute. And then we have already been approached several times in the state of Minnesota about seed production and processing interest by genetic companies who are already looking at the state of Minnesota to potentially build one of those facilities here. And that's kind of under development, you might say. So here's the landscape right now. 2019 hemp license report, 46 states. The yellow ones are coming along, and the white ones I expect will turn yellow really soon. So we've got that much acres of hemp, over 500,000 acres licensed nationally, and all the rest of it with over close to 17,000 state grower license issued, and the commissioner already told you what the numbers were for Minnesota. But I really like this chart, and I've showed it across the state already in a couple of meetings, but I like to show it again, is what are the top challenges in this industry right now. And I think the top one was finding processors. And you're going to hear about infrastructure. You need infrastructure to move forward to get the job done, and that's certainly what this survey said. The lack of banking services, but I think it's coming. Protocols are underway, things are moving forward in that direction. The harvesting equipment, I have already been blessed to see lots of equipment coming that is going to change how hemp is done here really, really soon. Managing growth, federal laws, all the rest of it is underway, and you know, from weed control, finding qualified labor, and all of that. And just keep in mind, you got to go back through history, that I always like to show this because way back in 1916, the USDA was printing reports on hemp at that time, and had great reports on how the crop could be used, processed, and all the rest of it way back then. Folks, I do have to say, because I think there's a lot of younger people here who don't remember what the Jerusalem artichoke was. Well, I do, but I don't think this is no Jerusalem artichoke, okay? And then on and on and on it went with how things evolve until we get to this day where hemp is approved. So at this point, we're going to start talking about hemp as a food product. One of the things here when we look at this value chain, it's already real. You can find hemp products in the grocery store, from snack foods to beer to all kinds of other things already. And contracts were available. You could grow organic hemp for food for about $1, maybe a little more, and conventionally for 40 to 50 cents a pound. And depending on what the yields were in your area, you probably had a crop that was in the money. So hemp as a food product makes a lot of sense, and it's already underway. And now it's just market traction because of its characteristics of being non-GMO, non-allergenic, and all of that. And this is something that our food science people put together at AURI. I thought they did a really good job. And just talking about, you'll see the word omega, omega, omega many times in there. Well, that's something that hemp brings to the table as something special about that particular protein. And again, how many have tried the hemp or beer? You can admit it. All right, there's a lot of interest in that, a lot of craft brewers in the state that I think you're going to see more introductions of that, and amongst all of the other products that are out here today. So the hemp food landscape, here we are, this is what it looks like. While this is 2017 data, I just recently saw some other data where this number's already doubled in terms of sales in the US. So I'll turn this over to Riley to make a few comments about the grain.
All right, so yeah, just kind of diving in a little bit on the grain economics here. So yields are kind of, reported yields we've kind of noticed that are all over the board, from, you know, down to 700 up to 1,500 per acre for the grain. We just kind of use a rough 1,000 pound an acre is a pretty good estimate. So as Harold had mentioned, you can get about 40 cents, 40 to 50 cents for conventional, about $1 a pound for organic. I know up in Manitoba, where I'm from, right now a lot of folks are sitting on conventional grain just from them just being overgrown right now, and they're really looking for organic as that market's starting to expand. So they were actually coming down to Minnesota to look for folks to grow for organic. So that is an opportunity that is available right now as well. But when it comes to some of the practices, harvesting, drying, cleaning, and everything, we look to Manitoba and Canada to kind of learn what they were doing, since Shannon mentioned they've been growing up there since 1998. They kind of got it pretty figured out up there. So biggest issues, the 99.95% purity is what they demand, or in other words, less than 0.05% foreign material in that finished grain, which is pretty clean. And then also drying down to, drying is a huge issue, so getting that down to 8 or 9% right away is very important. We've heard a lot of issues with folks with microbials, bad microbe issues with their grain, that they just didn't get it down drying enough in time. So, and there are kill steps, and there's reports that the microbes don't survive in the finished oil if you're going to press for oil. But really, the best practice there is to get it dry right away and just avoid that altogether. So just some of the equipment that's needed that we discovered here. Again, from Canada, just going up there for a few different trips, that if you have an indent graders, air screener, gravity table, you're going to get pretty darn close in most cases to that 99.95% purity. Depending if you have ergot or sclerotia bodies affecting your grain, you might need a color sorter, but in a lot of cases, not necessary. For cold pressed oils, you're going to use a mechanical screw press to press that oil, and then you're going to have the cake where you can mill that down and sift it into a protein powder, which would be around, you can get low 40s, mid 40s percent protein products for that. And then, or you can use a dehuller and actually make hemp hearts, which is a snack food that you'd find on your shelves in your grocery stores. Or you could roast or toast those hemp seeds, as was shown a couple slides ago, as a snack product. And you can also make hemp milk, similar you would with cashew or almond milk, with the hearts as well. And then Harold had mentioned the hemp beer, which use some of the hemp hearts in the mash process, but also there'd be opportunity to use the flour in lieu of the hops in that process, and some of the concentrated terpenes that some of the CBD processors are able to capture in their processing as concentrated aromatic profiles that can go into the beer as kind of a niche product, would be an opportunity that some are looking into. When you're processing for grain, you're going to have byproducts or co-products. The hemp seed hulls, when you're making your hearts, is going to be one of those, so we looked into that. Hemp cake, as well as the hemp flour, so after you extract the CBD from the flour itself. We looked at all those byproducts from a feed perspective, and we got a chart here that compares the energy, total digestible nutrients, or just another measure of energy, and crude protein to some other commodity crops. And we took, kind of using those crude protein and energy levels, we did some calculations and based them on different market fluctuations of common commodities, corn, soybean meal, alfalfa hay. So you can see that if your market's not there necessarily for the protein, you'd be able to, in theory, trade your hemp cake for $222 a ton, which is pretty good. And for some growers in the room, just thought it would be good for a calculation using that 1,000 pound an acre yield, kind of averagely, looking at about 730 pounds of hemp seed cake per acre, which would equate to about $81 per acre there. But let Harold talk a little bit about this. That's all great, but you actually right now you can't have any of these products here. They can't actually be marketed as legal feeds right now, just because they don't have Affco certification or international feed numbers, which is required in the U.S. to market anything as an animal feed. So let Harold talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, this Affco is really important, and in fact, Riley, there's work underway with a number of studies already. Most of these are Canadian. They're from the University of Manitoba and Nova Scotia and other places in Canada, where they have already tested this pretty well on feeding hemp seed oil for laying hens and also protein cake for growing cattle. They've also done some work on industrial hemp silage, as well as more work on amino acid scores and the nutrient value of hemp for ruminants. This is all important as we go on this march toward finding hemp as a ingredient in the feed world once we get Affco approval. So who's working on this? Colorado has a group there called the Hemp Feed Coalition. There's a number of states involved in companies as well. And I did check with them here just a couple days ago, and they said we are currently working on the first submission of a hemp ingredient definition application to Affco now. This is good news because it's our understanding is that once this gets done in one state, it applies to everyone. Not every single individual has to do this over and over and over. So we should thank the good people of Colorado for doing this. There's a lot more work to be done because you have to do the test on each species and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of work here, and the cost can be quite high. It can be as high as $250,000 per animal species per ingredient. They're also doing some work at North Carolina State University, and again in the poultry space, and that work should be published really soon and should add to the study. So now we'll get into hemp fiber.
All right, well, you got the 5-minute warning here, so we're going to try and get through this really quick. So hemp fiber, another spot in the value chain here. So on your right here, you actually see the fiber variety being grown. On your left is a modified graphic that we took from North Dakota State University that kind of outlines the fiber that would be produced from a grain crop. And so but really the bottom line here is a lot of products, but lack of processing really in the state and in the U.S. right now, really. So where we see ourselves is kind of up at the top there. We're starting to kind of see some investor interest in fiber processing, starting to do feasibility studies with different groups on the level of processing that's needed for the different fiber materials, primary fiber, secondary fiber, the herd, and forming relationships really with existing experts and fiber processing partners because we're definitely at this stage of the game, we're really in the learning phase, and so we're learning lots every day. Met with John Lupian today. It's great to have him here on our panel after this because he's just a wealth of knowledge that we learned a lot from today. But I'll keep moving on here.
Just very quickly, these are something new. This is from Kentucky. It's Fibonacci. They're developing a hemp wood manufacturing plant that's just basically making very beautiful wood out of hemp. I encourage you to go to the Fibonacci site. It's pretty phenomenal. They have a process where they use the fiber and combine it with protein adhesives made from soybeans, and off you go to make some of the most beautiful woodwork ever. Go ahead. Again, there's lots of plants across the state. This is the Sunstrand plant in Kentucky. They have made a number of materials from insulations and such. And then there's been plants in North Carolina, what Bascor we'll talk about here in a minute. From that, there's decorticators that look like this from New Zealand. We have the Power Zone Ag decorticator that we'll talk about later. Some really lower cost decorticators. This one from China that's in Minnesota right now. And then, of course, more sophisticated things like the hemp train that is coming to central Pennsylvania right now, we'll talk about later. This is the decorticator. Riley, go ahead.
I did want to announce this. This is pretty exciting that AURI has locked in the purchase of a decorticator. We are sourcing this from the Composites Innovation Center in Winnipeg, and it's originally a Czech Republic manufactured piece of equipment. So we're going to have this set up in the next couple of months, and we're really excited to be starting to work with some groups on innovating in the fiber space and providing some of those materials for R&D purposes. So I did have a video here, but out of time.
Well, all right. There we have it. We'll be around a little later. There's a lot to talk about here, and we're under a time limit. But is there a question or two?
Question or two, and remember, we'd like to get the question on the recording as well. So.
Completely respecting any standard set, I'm questioning why 99.95 has been set when we think we know through processing that we can, purify, clean this. That's such a high standard. It's going to limit the benefits to those? Does that make any sense?
No, I
think it's
agree
a
with
little
you.
too
It's a
high.
very high standard for sure, and it's set. That's really where the Canadians set their standards, and also the microbial limits is like when you look at the plate counts and the yeast and mold, where the levels they're expecting there is just it's really almost unrealistic for a lot of people. So I hear what you're saying for sure.
Got one right over here, Riley.
Just a question on the work that in Colorado that they're doing on Affco and that cost per ingredient per species. Is what they're doing, will it, I didn't see mentioned spent biomass for CBD flour. Will that be included or?
Right now, the answer that I understand is no. They are first focusing on the byproducts of hemp itself, the hemp cake, the oils, stuff like that, and the fibers and the stalks. They've stayed away from the CBD because they're waiting for federal FDA approval first.
Yeah, the cake and the hulls right now is what they're focusing on.
Final question. Anyone want to pick the brains of the guys who've been presenting it for us? One more. Deep left field. Here we go.
Is there anything going on right now with the leaves as far as a food product goes?
The leaves, not that I'm aware of. The leaves of the hemp plant
leaves
itself,
themselves, correct.
not from a food product that I've heard about.
Okay, is there any USDA or anything on that?
I've honestly heard nothing of the sort for the leaf for food products. So unless I just haven't heard of it, yeah.
There are at least 10 people maybe in Minnesota alone who have wanted to grow hemp for sprout it and sell it as sprouts, and also sell the leaves as like a green basically, or as a garnish for salads, kind of a novelty thing. And the MDA Food Safety Division has basically said, while it probably, and it can be proven to not contain any cannabinoids, it is not grass status per FDA, so it is not, so basically it's not illegal, but it's not legal.
Well, there you have
Thanks,
it.
Margaret.
Can't not do it. You can't not do it.
All right, thank you very